Nightcast. Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth brings you the current news from the world today and how it relates to Bible prophecy. Understanding the end-time events leading to the peaceful world tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth.
Well, greetings, friends. We've had a little break because of an annual church event, so it's good to be back tonight. And it's good to stay on top of news, as Jesus Christ told us to watch and be actively a part of world news by praying about what we see to the one who is watchful himself over his promises regarding world events. So sometimes we can remind him he's going to be watchful himself, but we can ask him to consider doing this or that, and he can weigh it against what he said will happen. And who knows? Your suggestion is maybe one God will take. But in this story tonight regarding the Ukraine, the United States has got itself very, very, very involved in the situation over there. In our first video, Ukraine's acting president has relaunched military operations against pro-Russian militants in the east after two men, one a local politician, found tortured to death. Shocking story tonight. The politician named as Volodymyr Rybak was found near rebel-held Slaviansk. He disappeared soon after he was filmed trying to gain access to the city council, which had been seized by pro-Russian activists. Daniel Stanford reports from Donetsk.
The headquarters of the eastern Ukrainian uprising in Donetsk tonight as the shaky Easter truce came to an end. Just a few minutes earlier, acting President Alexander Turchinov announced he was resuming what he has called the anti-terrorist operation in the rebellious east. The president said he was relaunching the operation after the bodies of two people were found. They had apparently been tortured. One of them was a local politician. Filmed here in the black jacket a few days ago, Volodymyr Rybak, who supports the government in Kiev, disappeared soon afterwards and has now turned up dead. He was from the same party as acting President Turchinov. Today he was getting support from the visiting American Vice President Joe Biden, who firmly blamed Russia for the problems in eastern Ukraine.
No nation should stoke instability in its neighbor's country. We call on Russia to stop supporting men hiding behind masks in unmarked uniforms, sowing unrest in eastern Ukraine.
In the east's most militant town, Slavyansk, the uncontrolled sorrow of a wife mourning today. Her husband, Sergei Rudenko, was one of three men shot by unknown gunmen while manning a rebel checkpoint. The deaths have only further increased the strong feelings and tensions in a region which has already brutally exposed the rifts that are opening up in Ukraine, rifts that will get harder to bridge each time blood is shed. It was the area around this town that the Kiev government targeted in its unsuccessful military operation last week. If anything, attitudes have hardened since then. This was the self-appointed mayor of Slavyansk today on the subject of the far-right activists of western Ukraine.
With the Nazis and fascists, we will have only one kind of dialogue. We will destroy them.
As the deaths mount on both sides and the rhetoric gets stronger, the time to resolve this crisis is running out.
And friends, you saw in this video how the United States Vice President was there in the Ukraine, and the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has accused the United States of running the show in Ukraine. In clips of an interview with Russia Today, released by the Russian Foreign Ministry, Mr. Lavrov said it was telling that the government in Kiev had decided to renew military operations against pro-Russian militants during a visit by the U.S. Vice President Joe Biden.
Well, it's quite telling that they chose the moment of Vice President of the United States visit to announce the resumption of this operation, because the launching of this operation happened immediately after John Brennan's visit to Kyiv. So I don't have any reasons not to believe that the Americans are running the show in a very close way. And yes, when you get daily phone calls from John Kerry telling you, you must, and when you understand how many thousand kilometers the United States is away from Ukraine, and then you see how agitated they are about seeing their sponsored people not really delivering on the things which are obvious, then you cannot avoid the impression that they are running the show very much. If we are attacked, we would certainly respond. If our interests, legitimate interests, the interests of Russians, have been attacked directly, like they were in South Ossetia, for example, I don't see any other way but to respond in full accordance with international law. Russian citizens being attacked is an attack against the Russian Federation.
Friends, next is next is a story related to the Middle East that we all should want to keep an eye on. Rival Palestinian factions Fatah and Hamas have announced a reconciliation deal, saying they will try to form a unity government in the coming weeks. Hamas and Fatah split in 2007. Previous reconciliation agreements have never been implemented. The BBC's Middle East editor, Jeremy Bowen, looks at what the deal means for the region.
Yeah, I think the timing of this has to be seen in the context of the Americans' latest attempt to try and make peace between the two sides here, which has been going on for 9 months and was meant to come to fruition. The deadline was, in fact, this coming Monday. Now, that has run into the sand. It's not going anywhere. And I think what the Palestinians on the Fatah side, that's roughly speaking the pro-Western side, are saying is that they want to try and build their strength from within. They're not getting what they want from the Israelis, therefore try to change the balance of power in their favor by getting national unity. Now, it has to be said, they've tried to mend this rift with Hamas before, and it hasn't worked. It hasn't failed. This one may fail again. The Israelis are saying this is a big crisis, that how can they negotiate with people who are allied with Hamas, who are an organization who want the end of the Jewish state. Now, I think what all this means in a broader sense is that there has now been, more than 20 years of negotiations, often brokered by the Americans or by other outsiders, between the Palestinians and the Israelis. And so far, none of them have worked. Both sides have not been able or willing to make the necessary sacrifices and deals. So what has happened in the past is that when a peace initiative hasn't worked, there's sometimes been a period of violence after it. And of course, people are wondering if that is the risk now.
Okay. Friends, U.S. President Obama has embarked on a tour of Asia, but will not be visiting the major power in the region, China. Chinese claims on disputed islands could see its increasing muscular foreign policy come into conflict with the U.S. Navy's traditional dominance and Mr. Obama's sphere of influence. And I'm going to roll past a little announcement that says this report contains some flash photography here. Rupert Winfield Hayes has this report.
It's been 18 years since a US president walked off Air Force One on a state visit to Japan. In that time, the whole map of Asia has been transformed by the rise of China. Out in the Sea of Japan, the US 7th Fleet is still the most powerful navy in Asia. Huge assault carriers like the USS Bonhomme Richard still guarantee Japan's security.
The US Navy has 9 of these monsters and another 10 even larger supercarriers. No other navy in the world has anything like this. American naval power is still supreme for now. But just a few hundred miles over there is China.
This Chinese boat is deep inside Japanese waters and refusing to stop. China is becoming much more aggressive in asserting claims to Japanese-controlled islands in the East China Sea. Japan's worried America may be going soft.
There was a real possibility that the Americans might be entangled into an actual combat simply because of this confrontation between China and Japan on about a certain few islands. The Americans backed off. It's not about the size of the military capability, which is immense, of course. It's the will of the Americans.
America has 27,000 Marines based in Japan. Their commander tells me they have both the will and the means.
The message is that the U.S. sticks by its allies. I mean, I landed on this beach 30 years ago as a young lieutenant, so this shows our staying power, the strength of these alliances.
It's exactly what Japan wants to hear, but they want to hear it now from the U.S. Commander-in-Chief himself. Rupert Winfield-Hayes, BBC News, in Tokyo.
And friends, did you notice in that report that the man from Japan talked about it's not the ability of the military. The United States military still definitely has the ability. It still has the biggest naval fleet there in the area. The Japanese leader pointed out it's a matter of will, and it comes down to how the commander will, exercise that will. And God has worked it, friends, so that his prophecies, his promises would be upheld by God. Let's look at one in Leviticus 26, verse 19. Leviticus 26 is one of 2 chapters in the Bible in which we've often, in our church circles and in college teaching, our headquarters college in Pasadena for many years, would teach prospective ministerial students, and that Leviticus 26 and Deuteronomy 28 are the 2 chapters in the Bible that are called the blessing and cursing chapters, because in those 2 chapters God announces blessings if you obey him, and he gets specific as to what the blessings are, and he announces curses if you disobey me, and he announces what those curses are. And in many cases those curses are just exactly the opposite of what the blessings are. We'll go through a few of them maybe in a moment. I think we have time to do that tonight. And so these 2 chapters have been called the blessing and cursings chapters, because God blesses you if you obey in these specific ways. He blesses you, and if you don't obey, he curses you in these specific ways. And one of the curses, if a nation, and these blessings and these blessings and cursings apply both to an individual and to a nation. If you as an individual obey God, the principles of these blessings apply to you. And then collectively, if you as an individual and the other individuals that make up your nation and your leaders, if they're obeying God, then very specifically these blessings that are announced to apply to a nation come into effect. Likewise, if more of the nation is disobeying God than those in the nation are obeying God, then the curses come into vogue. God exercises. God's behind this. God makes it happen and work out. One of the curses to a nation when it disobeys and is in verse 19 of Leviticus 26, where God says, "And I will break the pride of your power, and I will make your heaven as iron and your earth as brass." You know, we've got the power. As this video news clip showed, in the military, the naval fleet near Japan, in the waters near Japan, still the most major power. Nobody's got naval ships like what the United States has, as the video pointed out. But as the Japanese man leader pointed out also, it's a matter of the will of your commander. And time again, you know, God's put a leader in there. Actually, he's allowed the United States to do it himself. He's allowed the United States to put someone in that represents the majority of the people's doings. And it's sad to say the majority of the people's doings in the country, the United States, are evil, are not so good. And so we've got a commander-in-chief who has shown himself to be a little, let's just call a spade a spade. He's shown himself to be somewhat wimpy. He's shown himself to be flip-floppy. He'll say one thing and then do another. And of course, he's really hiding an agenda. He claims to be Christian, but you know, it's news after news. You can see really deep down inside from his training, his background, his real heart is that of a Muslim. And so he's anti-Christian when it really comes down to where he's really wanting to go with things. And so he's trying to lead a nation that was built on Christian principles. And you know, it's not going to work. It's dividing the nation more than any thing before has ever had. But it's not just him. It's, you know, God's let us have that kind of a wimpy, flip-floppy leader for now in the United States because the nation is sinning. And we lead the way. The United States leads the way in pornography around the world. We put out more of that than any other nation, and it's sad. It's prolific, and it's when we do the kind of things that go against what God says is the right way to live, the give way, the love way. These things in Leviticus 6 and the parallel chapter, Deuteronomy 28, are going to apply. Let's just go through a few of them, and then I just have one more news clip video to show for the evening, and we may make it a short evening if I don't read too much of this. I'm just going to get you started in it. Beginning at the first verse of Leviticus 26, God says, "You shall make no idols, nor graven image, neither rear up a standing image, neither shall you set up any image of stone in your land to bow down unto it, for I am the Lord your God. You shall keep my Sabbaths," verse 2, "and reverence my sanctuary. I am the Eternal." Verse 3, "If you walk in my statutes and keep my commandments and do them, then," verse 4, "I will give you rain in due season, and the land shall yield her increase, and the trees of the field shall yield their fruit." And verse 5, "Your threshing shall reach unto the vintage, and the vintage shall reach to the sowing time, and you shall eat your bread to the full, and dwell in your land safely." At verse 6, "I will give you peace in the land, and you shall lie down, and none shall make you afraid. And I will rid evil beast out of the land, neither shall the sword go through your land." You know, most of the battles the United States fights are overseas, thankfully, not inside the United States, at least not yet. but there are prophecies that, and even this chapter tells you what's going to happen when you don't obey. Let's go just a little further with the blessings. This is the blessing part. If you keep my commandments and walk in my statutes, reverence my sanctuary and keep my Sabbath, and don't have any idols and that you bow down to or set up as images, then we're going through some of the things God promises. And verse 7, and you shall chase your enemies, and they shall fall before you by the sword. 5 of you shall chase 100, and 100 of you shall put 10,000 to flight. And your enemies shall fall before you by the sword. For I will have respect unto you, and make you fruitful, and multiply you, and establish my covenant with you. And you shall eat old store, and bring forth the old because of the new. And I will set my tabernacle among you, and my soul shall not abhor you. And I will walk among you, and will be your God, and you shall be my people. I am the eternal your God, says God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, that you should not be their bondmen, and I have broken the bands of your yoke, and made you go upright. Now those are the promises given in Leviticus 26 of blessings if an individual, and if the majority of individuals in a nation obey God. Now, beginning in verse 14, let's go through a few of the curses, and we'll get to that verse, and maybe we'll stop at that verse where he says, I'll break the pride of your power, just for time's sake tonight. Verse 14, but if you will not hearken unto me, and will not do all these commandments, and if you shall despise my statutes, or if your soul abhor my judgments, so that you will not do all my commandments, but that you break my covenant. Verse 16, God says, I will also do this unto you, if you're not going to keep my commandments. I will even appoint you terror, consumption, and the burning ague that shall consume the eyes, and cause sorrow of heart, and you shall sow your seed in vain, for your enemies shall eat it. Verse 17, and I will set my face against you, and you shall be slain before your enemies. They that hate you shall reign over you, and you shall flee when none pursues you. Friends, these are just part of the curses God announces if you as an individual, if collectively the majority of the individuals of a nation are not hearkening unto God and will not do all his commandments. And verse 18, let's read just 2 more till we get to verse 19. Verse 18, and if you will not, 18 and 19, those are the 2 verses. Verse 18, and if you will not yet for all this hearken unto me, then I will punish you 7 times more for your sins. And verse 19 that we read earlier, and I will break the pride of your power, and I will make your heaven as iron and your earth as brass. He'll cut off the rain. He'll break the pride of our power. Well, we have a few minutes. I think I could do just a few more verses so you get an idea of what he's saying regarding militarily. And your strength, verse 20, shall be spent in vain. For your land shall not yield her increase, neither shall the trees of the land yield their fruits. Verse 21, and if you walk contrary unto me, and will not hearken unto me, I will bring 7 times more plagues upon you according to your sins. Friends, the rest of Leviticus 26 tell you how awfully bad the curses can get against individuals and individuals of a nation. when we're not obeying God. But we can certainly see that part of verse 19 already in play in the United States. I will break the pride of your power. That's happening right in front of our eyes. It has been for a number of years, but very prominently so now. NATO may have, we're seeing in the news how NATO may fall apart, how it's not really doing, it's not protecting the NATO interest in Europe now, and Russia's running in, doing things, and let's keep an eye on this. We'll be having more on this. One more story we have, and then that'll be it for tonight. We told you about the U.S. President Obama visiting on a week-long tour of Asia. He's there with the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal that's high on the agenda. His relationship with Japan could be the key link in the 12-nation free trade agreement, but not everyone in that country supports the deal. Linda Yu reports.
Springtime, the promise of new beginnings. But before you can reap, you have to sow. 80-year-old Shigeo Endo is preparing his rice fields, as he has for over half a century. Farmers like him have been protected by the government. There's a 778% tax on imported rice. He doesn't want to see that end.
We can't compete with countries like Australia or Canada, who farm on a large scale, if tariffs are abolished. People will tend to go for what is cheaper. I think Japanese agriculture will be fatally wounded.
He and his family have been shielded for decades. It's a sore point for the Americans and the proposed free trade agreement. Though the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP, isn't just about trade. It's the key to Obama's Asia pivot, as he wants to reorient the U.S. toward fast-growing Asia. But that doesn't make any difference to these protesters.
These are the most vocal critics of the TPP, or Trans-Pacific Partnership. Japan and the U.S. are major trading nations who already trade a lot with each other. So of course there's some benefit in having more free trade. What is so special about this one?
Is it more about who's not at the table?
Well, Abe threw his hat in the ring because he wants to prove to the United States he's a reliable alliance partner. So I think that you can't look at TPP entirely through the economic and trade lens. You have to also look at it from the angle of strategic advantages and Japan's worries about China's regional hegemonic ambitions.
At a local festival, they celebrate the arrival of the new season. President Obama wants to celebrate a new spring, a new era, even a second opening of Japan. Prime Minister Abe is hoping for trade to deliver growth. With so much at stake, both Abe and Obama will want to show progress. But it will be baby steps. Linda Yu, BBC News, Niigata.
Thank you, Linda. And friends, thank you for tuning in tonight. That's it for this Wednesday night edition of Nightcast. Finally back on the air since last Thursday night. It's the time we've taken a break for the Days of Unleavened Bread for our church members who observe that. We'll be back again, God willing, and the creek don't rise tomorrow night, Thursday evening, with the next edition of the current day's world news related to the Bible and prophecy here on Nightcast. Until then, this is your host, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth, saying, so long, friends.
You have been watching Nightcast with Stephen Lloyd Gilbreth. Nightcast can be seen Sunday through Thursday nights here on cogtv.org. Tonight's program is also available anytime on demand in the cogtv.org video archive.